we don't really have any family in close proximity. So some of my wife has quite a large family. She has 4 sisters, all but one have kids as well. So our kids have an awful lot of cousins. She has a couple of sisters who live not too far away. So one about down in Southampton, so about 50 kilometres away. One over in London, so similar. So neither my parents nor my wife's parents are close at all. My wife's parents are down in Cornwall. Mine are up in Derbyshire, where I grew up. So that has been. It is difficult not having any immediate family that you can rely on for childcare. It would be great if we had, either my parents or my wife's parents close by for the childcare, and also so that they could see more of the children as well. We make a conscious effort to stay in touch with both sides of our family. So we'll go up to Derbyshire. My parents come down quite often. It was kind of interesting for me to become part of my wife's family as well, because I'm an only child. I don't have any brothers or sisters. So to kind of become part of this big extended family where there are, 5 sisters and 12 kids, and is really great. That was an experience that I really enjoyed, because it was obviously different. Not necessarily worse, but just different for me when I was growing up.
Yes, I come from a very big family in North Carolina, as families tend to go in North Carolina. My immediate family isn't so big. I have a brother and 2 stepsisters, as my mom is remarried. However, my mother's family is huge. She's one of 6 brothers and sisters, the youngest, as a matter of fact, which means that all of her older brother and sisters have loads and loads of children who also have loads of children. Yeah, I imagine we're anywhere from 20 to 50 for a normal family gathering, so if you can imagine that. Well, they came out like a straight up Brady Bunch family. There are three boys and 3 girls. The girls are called Glenda and Gail, who are my aunts, of course, and my uncles are called Alec, David, and Sammy, which Alec is a very funny name, because no one really knows why he's called Alec, because his name is actually Alexander, which obviously short for Alexander would be Alex, but we just call him Alec for whatever reason. My grandma is definitely the head of the family, hands down. She's getting older, getting on in her age now, but is still definitely very much in charge. And no one would dare question anything that she says. But don't get me wrong, she's a very loving matriarch and everything, but her opinion is the final opinion on every matter, period. My grandma was divorced from my grandpa. Not an uncommon thing in the U.S. I think we're pretty famous for divorce, just as much as we are anything else. But every good divorce always leads to a better marriage. I suppose that's how we look at it. And she was divorced just after my mom turned 18, I would imagine, somewhere right in there. And spent most of her life single and has recently remarried, probably within the past 10 years. And her new husband is called Jack and is a really good guy. And immediately has become part of the family.
I was born in London, in northeast London, and I moved to Newcastle, between Newcastle and Sunderland, right on the coast, when I was about 3 years old. My mum is from Scotland, from Glasgow in Scotland, and my dad is from Birmingham. So they met in London, and then we all moved up to Newcastle. And I lived there till I was 18, when I went to university in Sheffield, in Yorkshire. And now I'm back in London. I came back about 6 months ago, after being abroad for about 2 years. The term Geordie refers to people who live in Newcastle. There's another term called Mackems, and they are people that live in Sunderland, and there's a lot of rivalry between Geordies and Mackems, partly to do with football, partly to do with just general not liking each other. But because I live close to Newcastle, but I actually went to school in Sunderland, then I'm a bit confused and mixed up. But I wouldn't call myself a Londoner, even though I was born here and I live here again now. But yes, I would call myself a Geordie. I think people know about Geordies partly because of their strong accent, and their accent is quite different to any other accent in the country. I guess people think that Geordies are people think of them as, I think, quite loud and maybe a little bit brash and up for having a good time, going out, drinking a lot. I think that Geordies aren't unlike any other groups of people in the country, but maybe we do have a bad reputation. I think generally people in the south think that people in the north are a bit more brash and loud and maybe a little bit more common, but I don't think that's true. I'm enjoying living in London. I like the hustle and bustle, and I think for a young person it's the place to be regarding job opportunities, and I've got a lot of friends who've ended up living in London as well. And there's always something to do. It's much more exciting than being back up in Newcastle. And I think I will live, I'm fairly settled now and think I will live here for a fair amount of time to come. I think there are places in London that make up for not maybe having a garden or a lot of space in your house. Like, there's lots of parks that are really nice. They spend a lot of money and stuff on making sure that there are places in London that people can go and feel like they're not in the city and not surrounded by cars and buses and shops and tourists and things like that.
Atlanta, Georgia is a really great city. It's often called the City of Trees. Something that's we're really good at in the States is when a city is being developed, taking all the trees out, just bulldozing them. In Atlanta, I think we've done a great job of maintaining the greenery in our city. It is a forward-thinking city. Something interesting about Atlanta is there are, I think we're over 6 million in the metropolitan area, most of which did not grow up, obviously, in and around Atlanta. So we're a city of transplants, which makes us culturally diverse and really very interesting. In Atlanta, we rely on our cars, too much actually. There is a rail system. Unfortunately, either it was not designed properly or people have just moved from where they were when that rail system was designed, so it's not fully utilized. I know a few people who will take the rail into work, but we need to do something about that because we have horrible traffic problems. It's not uncommon for someone to spend an hour each way into work when they're not really traveling that far. So we've got to do something about transportation. I drive my car to and from my office. My office is less than 10 miles from my house, so I'm on surface streets.
I live with my family, wife and 2 kids in a village, a largish village, probably around 3,000 people, something like that. So a largish village outside of a fairly large town. So you wouldn't really call it kind of countryside proper. There is a large amount of common land and woodlands that you can go in. You can take your bike out and go mountain biking. You can go for walks, but you would never feel you were in the middle of nowhere as you might do if you were in Scotland or if you were in the Lake District. I guess we lived there partly just simply by wasn't really a conscious decision to kind of move out of London. That's always where I've lived since I moved down to the south of England. I've always lived around that area. It's somewhere where you can commute into London if you need to. So I think in our hearts we'd probably quite like to live in the middle of nowhere in a really rural location, but we've never, I suppose, had the courage or the jobs to allow us to kind of make that break. And the great thing about where we are now is we can, as I do at the moment, I drive into the sort of West London, which takes about an hour, or you can drive to the train station and be in the centre of London in half an hour on the train.
So Queensland has, for a very long time, been seen as sort of the backward state, and then there's this competition that happens between Sydney, which is the capital of New South Wales, and Melbourne, which is the capital of Victoria, about being the best Australian city, because of course the actual Australian capital is Canberra, and the only people who hang out there are politicians, so it's an incredibly boring place, and has no chance at all. But so Sydneyites and Melbourneites are constantly in competition with one another about which is best. And Sydney's very business focused and Melbourne's very art focused. But they like to sort of think that they can compete on each other's sort of strengths. And in all of my jobs, actually, I used to think I was incredibly lucky because I used to travel to Melbourne and Sydney a lot. So it was Queensland, Brisbane I always felt was the best place to live, and then I could go, on work time and work money and go to Sydney and Melbourne all of the time.
So originally I'm from the northeast. I'm from a little town called Whitley Bay, which is not too far from Newcastle. So I'm not quite a Geordie, but not too far off originally. When I was about 5, my parents moved down to Manchester, and most of my childhood I grew up on the kind of Manchester-Derbyshire border. So actually a village in the Peak District called Charlesworth, which is quite a nice rural place in the Peak District near a town called Glossop. So that's where I kind of spent most of my childhood. And then when I went to university, I sort of went back to my roots and went to university back up in Newcastle. Although I don't have too much of a Geordie accent left in me these days. But I went to university back up in Newcastle. Lived in various places, mostly in the north of England. Lived in Manchester for quite a while, and then probably when I was a long time ago now, probably about 12-13 years ago, I moved down to the south of England. So ever since then, so over the last sort of 12-13 years, I've lived around in Surrey, around Woking, and a short time actually I lived in New York as well. I did live in New York for a while, for about 12 months on and off. Yeah, when I moved down from the north of England to the south of England, I guess there was quite a noticeable difference in kind of culture and behaviour and so on. I think, as you said, people from the north are probably quite proud of that, and probably always kind of have it both ways in a way. You can be, you can live down here and be a southerner, and then in your heart perhaps still be a bit of a northerner at heart. I don't know. I mean, I think people are people wherever you go. So once you get kind of beyond the mass and you talk to individuals, then I think people are people. But I do notice differences in behaviour in things like driving style, for example. So in the north, or maybe it's even a London thing, a southeast London thing, but certainly in the north, people seem to have a little bit more time. They're not quite so pressured. They're not quite so kind of time all the time. I think people around London, people around the southeast, are obviously a lot of people are there for their career, and they have their career and their job, and they're focused, which is great. That's why a lot of people, including myself, move down here. But yeah, there's certainly, I'd say, it's a bit more relaxed, slower pace of life away from London and the southeast.